Hello and welcome back to Series 3 of Life Sci AI, the podcast series. Thank you to everyone who has listened to Series 1 and Series 2 so far, and continuing the theme of highlighting really innovative ways that AI is being used in the life science industry across Europe. We're really lucky today to have the CEO and co-founder of Healx. Now, I'm sure many of you know that Healx are mission-driven biotech company that are within rare disease and utilizing AI to create novel and effective ways to treat these diseases. And Tim Guilliams, the CEO and co-founder, alongside his role at Healx, he is also the co-founder and trustee of the Cambridge Rare Disease Network, and also has been listed on the Sunday Times 100 list of entrepreneurs in 2019, and was named as one to watch in the Telegraph's top 50 most ambitious business leaders in 2020, and now as a guest on the podcast. So you can see where they might rank. But real pleasure to have you on, Tim, and yeah, glad to have you on.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me today.
No, it's absolute pleasure, as I said, and I'll give sort of time now for maybe to flesh out a bit about yourself and to sort of say hello.
So, as you mentioned, my name is Tim. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Healx, and I'm a bioengineer and chemical engineer by training. Moved to Cambridge for a PhD in biophysics, so very technical background, and then decided to start Healx after meeting my co-founder, and more importantly, meet a rare disease parent called Nick Siro. And that was back in 2014. And Nick has two children with an ultra rare disease called black bone disease. Right. And there's only a few hundred patients worldwide. And when his kids were born, he was told by the medical profession that there were no treatments available and that he should enjoy the next couple of years with his kids. But what was amazing about Nick is that he didn't take no for an answer. He went on a mission to try and find a treatment for his children. And so when we met him in 2014, he was trying to repurpose, unusual chemicals, something as part of a weed killer. But he had understood that there was therapeutic potential there because he was targeting the same enzyme that his children had a rare mutation in. And so this is where, when we got pulled in to this world of rare diseases, and there are 7,000 rare diseases, 95% don't have an approved treatment today. So this is a massive therapeutic unmet need, and worldwide, this impacts over 400 million patients. So that's larger than the population size of the United States, and half of those are children. And so at Healx, we're trying to apply machine learning to do this at scale in a different way and in a much more cost-effective way.
Yeah, and we're going to go into the foundation story in a short while, so I'm excited to hear about that. But in terms of the rare disease piece there, you touched on it and decided to allude to the landscape. So 400 million people worldwide have a rare disease. Just explain, I guess, some examples of rare diseases. You said your founders' children, black bone disease, but also maybe as to the challenges that comes with rare disease and drug development and therapeutic development in rare disease as well.
So rare diseases are in fact not very rare. So many people are affected by them, and most of them don't have an approved treatment. And the reason for that is that the traditional drug discovery model is basically broken and not geared towards rare disease drug development, because it costs $2 to $3 billion per new drug. There is a 95% failure rate in the drug discovery process, and it typically takes 10 to 15 years. And so it's difficult to justify for large pharma companies to work on very small disease populations. And so unless you change the way drug discovery is done, the economics of drug discovery, it's a very hard problem to solve, but one where really machine learning and AI can help do this at a different cost basis, different speed, different scale. And what's incredibly important in rare disease is to work very closely with the patient groups and communities, because they really know about the disease. They are the experts. They are your champions who are basically making the impossible possible. And so it's people like Nick who starts on a mission to try and find a treatment, and then manage to bring all the stakeholders together to really make a success out of it. And what was incredible is that Nick managed to get this particular treatment approved last year by the EMA. So he did succeed, and it's so inspiring and motivating. And so this is why at Healx we work very closely with the patient communities, because they really are the experts and the champions for this.
Okay, and I think there's people that we work with in the rare disease space as well. So at Cypher, we are acutely aware of the challenges within drug discovery, particularly that companies can go through, the reimbursement challenges, let's say, and there not being that, I guess, carrot at the end of it, potentially, to make it commercially viable all the time in its current state. And I think we're going to go into the difference that Healx are making into, I guess, the development pipeline and development process to enable it to be more beneficial and efficient with your technology in a short while. But before meeting Nick, were you aware of rare diseases as much as you are now? And when did you really, I guess, think, right, we can make a difference here, and I know how I can help with my background and coming together with Nick?
Yeah, so there's a few things that happened. Basically, in my research group, there was a lot of computational work happening. There was in the chemistry department at Cambridge University. So there was a lot of innovation on how you could try and apply AI, machine learning, computational biology to drug discovery. And so that was something I was really passionate about. And then my co-founder, Dave, he has had many decades of drug discovery and incredible success. So he's the co-inventor of Viagra, amongst, one of the drugs he invented. He used to be global head of drug discovery at Roche, so managing 2,000 scientists, very large budgets, and an incredible amount of drug discovery programs. And so when we started to talk on how machine learning could really be applied to not just make incremental improvements to the current process, but really transform the way drug discovery is done, he got super excited. And then when we met Nick, we just got pulled into this new world of rare diseases. I'm fortunate enough not to have close family members affected by a rare disease, but then when really understanding their challenge, but also their champion, their passion, their focus to really try and achieve the impossible is just so rewarding. And then we met other parents like Nick, who also went on a mission, set up a foundation to try and find a treatment. And what they're missing are people who understand drug discovery, or those novel technologies where you can start matching drugs to diseases in a much more effective way. So you have more than 4,000 approved treatments today, but if you look at combinations of those, combinations of 2 or 3, you have more than 10 billion possibilities per disease. And so that's an incredible therapeutic wealth that's currently untapped. And you need machine learning algorithms to really help you match the existing treatments, those combinations of those, to the right rare disease. And so that's really how we got started. And we have people in the company who are parents of rare diseases themselves, or in certain cases are affected personally, like themselves by a rare disease. And so we're all aligned behind this mission, where we bring leading technology and drug discovery expertise together to find rare disease treatments.
No, it's so touching to find the common purpose, and I think the stat that stood out so far for me is the 400 million people. So it will not be uncommon for anybody in any walk of life, in any company, to either be directly or indirectly affected by rare diseases, and therefore affected by the work that you are doing at Healx. In terms of the process then, and the use of AI, and AI is being used in so many different ways now, both in life sciences and outside of life sciences. But I think just doing a comparative analysis very quickly, Tim, maybe from what is the process for a normal pharma company or a biotech in rare disease for drug development, and then the situation that you're trying to fix with your technology, be so helpful for people to understand actually the powerful work that you're doing.
That's a really interesting topic and question. So the current drug discovery paradigm is called target-based drug discovery. And that's based on a very simple principle, which is one disease, one target, one drug. And actually we have 22,000 genes which get upregulated, downregulated. We have more than 8,000 metabolic reactions. And so the current drug discovery paradigm is way too simple. And if you start with the wrong target or the wrong hypothesis, then you're bound to fail in the clinic. And so you get to a 95% failure rate because you effectively start with the wrong target-based hypothesis. Yeah. And this is part of the thing we wanted to change from the beginning. And so we start with something that we call hypothesis-free, allowing us to analyze all the data that there is on a particular rare disease, but without a bias to start with. And then we let the data, the algorithms, predict which treatment or treatment combination could be based on that, could work for that particular disease. And then afterwards, we try and work out what the disease mechanism or the drug mechanism is. And so we've developed a way where we can do this more in parallel. So the current drug discovery approach is very linear. You start with agreeing on what the target is, and then you optimize for a drug, etc. And then you develop that towards the clinic, and you do the first clinical trial. So we've developed a more parallel approach, and one that starts without this bias, because everyone seems to be working on the same drug targets and then seem to then fail in the clinic. And what's exciting is you can really bring, let's say, broadly two data buckets together and novel approaches. And so one is really around knowledge graph technology. And that's the technology that Google uses, for example. So what we've developed is a biomedical knowledge graph focused on rare diseases. And so you can ask questions to your graph and get answers on which potential drugs could work for a particular disease. And that's a bit like a giant telescope where you look at the universe of drugs and diseases, and this allows you to kind of find new relationships and potential treatment opportunities and zoom into that. And like I mentioned, Google is using that for their search engine, is incredibly effective. And so we've built the equivalent for rare diseases. And then the other aspect is really around the new biology that's now emerging. And that's your genome, your transcriptome, your proteome, your metabolome. All of that wasn't really widely available a few years ago. And so now you can generate this new biological information, which gives you an enormous insight around the disease biology and potential drug activities. And it's making the most of that and then applying AI to this new biology. And this is really a field that's fascinating and that will transform human health. You had a big phase where AI or machine learning was applied to chemistry, which is super important, and we're doing that as well. But the AI and biology, that's really, I think, what's gonna transform human health, to really understand the complexity of human biology in a completely different way.
Oh, awesome. So you sort of started, would you start out with creating the knowledge graph? That was sort of your first sort of concept, which has come through. And I was reading on around your tech, around 300 years of worth of reading for literature is embedded into this sort of technology which you have, which I think just shows the amount of, I guess, knowledge bank that you've got in there, that you've collated over the time to enable the sort of, I guess, the sort of smart partnering, I guess, is kind of the way that you're looking at it. But then taking it on the new stream of AI that's coming through. So the new biology piece, how integrated is that so far into what you're doing, and how much of an impact and an impression will it make on your development in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, do you think?
I think it's really important to approach, let's say, a particular disease from different angles. And so we've developed a suite of different methods and that apply different data types to try and predict novel disease biology and novel potential treatments, whether as a monotherapy or combination. And this is where most complex diseases will need 2 or 3 drugs to help get the patient better, that have been really optimized for that. And so the trick is to really run those analyses and predictions in parallel, and try and there as well not to have a strong bias with, oh, knowledge graph is the only method that's valuable and that we believe in, or the transcriptomic, so that's your gene expression, that's the most valuable method. You want to basically run things in parallel, and then let the data tell you and the results tell you what worked and didn't work. And particularly in rare disease, you have a lot of knowledge gaps and data gaps. So you have to navigate this in a data poor environment. So there's information gaps that you don't know yet about the disease, and then we apply AI to try and predict what those knowledge gaps are. And we also apply a data-driven approach to ranking the rare diseases that we need to work in, because you have 7,000. So how do we select the ones that we're going to predict treatments for? And that's based on predicting or selecting diseases with a high likelihood of success, where we basically select diseases where we think we have a good chance of being able to find a treatment, and then translating that in the clinic to have a patient impact.
So in terms of the knowledge gap piece, is quite interesting, because it was going to go into a train of conversation around sort of risk and risk management, around, especially around your portfolio as well, and it must be a consideration for you. And you said you're looking at working with ones where you know there's a higher risk, higher chance of success. So with a knowledge gap environment, in a 95% failure rate environment historically, how do you make those decisions?
They're very hard decisions to make, and so there's broadly 4 aspects that we take into account. One is around the disease biology and data, and so we're making the most of what everyone else has already discovered and published and shared. And then we look at the quality of that and the data gaps that are potentially still missing. And then with the patient group partnerships and other key opinion leaders, we then generate the missing data. around the disease biology. The second aspect is really around the models to test your treatments. And there as well, some rare diseases don't have appropriate models to test your treatment hypothesis. And so we need to take that into account as well. And then we also need to take into account the clinical trial setup and what are you going to measure, what do we think the regulators are going to want to see. And there as well, it's incredibly important to work with the patient groups and charities because they understand the disease. They know what's needed from a potential treatment. They can tell you what should be measured to really measure patient benefit, and then help you talk to the regulators to come up with a clinical trial design that makes sense for the patients as well. So it's a true partnership. And then lastly, we also need to look at the economics of that particular disease and clinical trial development. And we are working in a space where we're incredibly cost effective because we're making the most of treatments that are already out there and see how we can combine them to find a new treatment for a rare disease. And so it's quite a complex process. And then we try and break down the likelihood of success at each stage so that we're in a data-driven way trying to understand the risk of each program. And in a world where 95% fails, you really have to optimize for likelihood of success. Like that's really trying to bring that up as much as possible.
Absolutely. And it seems like you've got quite a robust process there. And so how long did it take you to create that process of qualifying which ones you would tackle and which ones you wouldn't?
So that's a never ending work, because you can always improve it. And so we started the company in 2014. The first 4 years were really building the foundations and the technology platform and the key principles. And then after that, it was more about scaling and applying the technology across a variety of diseases. But that will never end, and it will continue to improve. And with the data growing, the number of predictions that we make that are being tested, we can then improve the algorithms, and so that will continue to improve, and so it will never stop, I think.
No, for sure. It's interesting because I was going to sort of think about Healx versus other rare disease biotech pharma companies that are normally centered around one rare disease area, or a bit of a wider portfolio perhaps, but not as, I guess, diverse in diversifying their risk for it. So do you feel that not only the work that you're doing is very, very helpful, but also that you're shining a light on actually, if you can diversify portfolios as much as possible, you can bring forward the, I guess, commercial risk and de-risking what you'll be looking at when there are failures, inevitably when there will be.
Absolutely. And this is where it's important to look at drug discovery from a different perspective. So traditional biotechs work on 3 to 5 programs and don't build a large therapeutic portfolio because they haven't managed to find a way to increase the likelihood of success, have better economics, so a cheaper way of identifying potential treatments and translating them to the clinic. And so what we focused on is really building a large, de-risked and balanced therapeutic portfolio across different therapeutic areas and rare disease. And we've worked very closely with a world-leading economist at MIT, Professor Andrew Lo, who is a fascinating person who is applying risk theory and financial modeling to drug discovery to try and build a large de-risk portfolio, and where you can manage timelines, value creation, return on investment, patient impact, and you have to build a model where you have enough shots on goal to build a successful company, and then with the successful drugs that you manage to get to the clinic and eventually to market, you can then fund more drug discovery programs. And so that's such an important aspect. And there as well, I think the financial tools and modeling have now also been significantly improved, and you can apply them to treatment development as well.
Okay. And if someone's listening to this thinking, I have a concept, an idea, or in fact a therapeutic area for which they are struggling, what's the process? Are you proactively trying to find people, or are you assessing the rare diseases sort of on a monthly basis, or do people come to you? How does the initiation start?
It can be both ways. So we have our own internal process of ranking, selecting rare diseases to work on, but it can also be someone externally who approaches us, and then there's a process to go through to convince us to work on that particular rare disease, and that will include understanding of the disease data that's available, the data gaps, the translational path towards the clinic, how active and passionate the patient group and communities around the disease, because we believe they're absolutely key, and so it can happen in two ways.
Okay, so but it's kind of like a plug. If anyone is listening, then speak to Tim. But yourself though, and growing with a scaling company as a founder, how have you found that from inception in 2014?
It's been a really exciting journey. So we started in 2014, and then for the first 4 years, we were basically still a small team trying to build the foundations and validating the technology. And then back in 2018, so we were probably around 15 people then. Then we raised a $10 million Series A, followed by a $56 million Series B. And so within a year, we then raised $66 million. And so then you really start going on your growth journey, and you can scale your impact and scale the team and scale the number of therapeutic programs. So today we're about 140 people, and that's continuing to grow. And we, I guess, tripled in size over the pandemic. And now we're starting the first clinical trial, phase 2. That's going to be to test drug combination for Fragile X syndrome.
Yes.
Very exciting. That's the first patient will be dosed in a number of weeks. So that's an amazing milestone for the company. And we wouldn't have been able to do that without our partnering with the patient groups and charities for that disease. So it's been a really amazing journey. I've learned so much, and the people who joined the team have been really incredible. Also, our investors are aligned behind the mission of the company. So yeah, really exciting time and journey so far.
Yeah, and I think I would advocate anyone to jump on your website and have a look at the pipeline that's coming through. For me, I've touched on it. There's just a diversity of what you're working on, neurodevelopment, oncology, inflammatory, liver, clinical areas that are getting close to the neurodevelopment one that you'll be going into clinical trials for, which is awesome to see. Did you ever think you would be a CEO? Or was this nothing that you just considered before, but you fell into it perhaps?
No, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm a first-time founder and CEO. My background is very technical, and no, that wasn't the plan. But we had this idea. We wanted to get started, and I think the important bit is to build a good supportive team around you and aligning towards a shared mission and purpose. And yeah, it's been a great journey. I've been really fortunate with how things have gone with Healx, and now we're continuing to grow. So that's really, we're going through the growth phase now, and I've learned so much on the journey as a first time founder CEO. Yeah.
What would you say the biggest learns that you had as a founder who scaled during COVID? What were your lessons learned there, and what are the major triumphs do you reckon that you had as well?
So I think one of the biggest learnings is, I guess, the importance of internal communication and alignment as you grow, but also if you then suddenly move towards a more remote setting, then your communication is even more important. And we have someone exceptional internally, a director of internal communication and alignment, Charlotte, who's doing an exceptional job at communicating with the team and really break down, okay, here's our mission and how does this translate into strategic objectives, and then on more quarterly objectives and OKRs as we move forward through the year. And that's such an important element, and the same around your culture and values of the company. You want to make sure you're very clear on what the company is about, which behavior you want to see and you want to promote, and there as well, making sure you have the right person leading on the people sides and HR side is so important, because we are trying to solve a really big and challenging problem here. And so it's really important to be clear around your mission, purpose, but also company values, and then everyone can align behind that as you continue to scale.
No, I completely agree with you. And it's great to see the amazing support and the amazing people that you have in Healx, because it can always be a challenging time when you're scaling, and it's always the scaling versus the culture question. And it's something that, Cypro, part of LHI, that we're going through, and we have a clear, good human ethos and a clear vision that's been put in place in the past sort of 6 to 12 months, and a great people team as well to help us keep the culture, keep the ethos and the purpose behind what we're doing, but then also making sure that we scale in the way that we need to make the impact that we keep wanting to do. And partnering and working potentially with people like yourselves and other people that we do across the market is really where our purpose comes from. So I'm really excited to see where you go this year. And is it going to be a global scaling job? Are you going to be looking to scale outside of Cambridge as well? I don't know what the split is now with with Healx, how heavy you are in Cambridge versus across the globe. I don't know.
We have a hybrid model. So I would say about half the people are in Cambridge and half outside of Cambridge, UK, Europe, also US. So we are scaling globally. We have a hub now in London, in Bristol, and so we're growing in with hubs, but people, we just want to work with the best people. So if that person is based in Denmark, then we'll work with that person in Denmark. And then we have quarterly team days where people come together. We hope in person when that's possible. It's been not always possible, but we find ways to kind of connect monthly, quarterly. And but at the end of the day, I think it's really important to just work with the best people wherever they are.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess if anybody is listening to this who is in a similar sort of, I guess, pre-growth stage than what Healx were 2-3 years ago, and wondering how to solve the problems, I'm sure Charlotte and your head of people and such will be happy to connect with them and help them go through those. But Tim, I've taken a lot of your time this morning, and I've been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. I guess, yeah, it's just going to be phenomenal to see the impact of Healx this year. And good luck on the clinical trials. I think a lot of people will be waiting with bated breath, and wish you every success on those.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick. It was a pleasure to be here today.
No, it's pleasure's all mine. Speak to you soon.